tonight and just give a short introduction, and then I'll let our two presenters take it over. First of all, just want to thank you for being here. My name is Bill Meyer. I'm one of the assistants, or I am the assistant to the superintendent of student staff services. I work closely with Heather Riley, who oversees our counseling department. I think this event existed pre-COVID when we tried to provide sort of an evening event around athletic recruitment and the college process, and we're so excited to bring it back this year. So much has changed since 2019 to 2024. I mean, I was thinking just from NIL deals to actual unionization of teams in college sports, to the transfer portal. Yeah, everything has changed in terms of this landscape. So, you know, it couldn't be better time to have these two experts speak to us. So I'm so grateful to bring these two individuals, Jeff Durso-Finley and Holly Brooks-Becker. They're both coming from the Lawrenceville School, which is down in New Jersey. It's one of the premier prep schools in the country. They oversee the college counseling process at that school, and they are experts in this field and topics. You can see they've written a book. They literally travel around talking about this, and we are so lucky to have them here tonight. So if you guys can help me welcome them with a warm round of applause, I'll turn it over to them.
All right, great. Okay. Thanks, Bill. So yes, I'm Jeff Durso-Finley, and this is my partner, Holly Brooks-Becker. We have been running versions of this program for a number of years now, and just to sort of frame it so you know where we're coming from in a couple different contexts. We have an hour-long version, we have a 75-minute version, we have an hour-and-a-half version, we have a 3-hour, in fact, we have a 5-hour version of this program. We're going to do like the 90-minute one in about 65 minutes. All right, so hold on to your hats. There's a lot of stuff that comes pouring out. The other part that might be helpful to know in terms of framework is that we started doing this program because we were really sick and tired about our prospective student athletes getting pinged with all these, here's how you win a scholarship, here's how you get money for college sports, all the time in their email inbox, direct mailing, and it was just frustrating because depending on the statistics you use, it really is only between 1% and 2% of all college athletes receive some form of athletic grant payment. With the expectation, or that you walk into it thinking it's going to be everybody, because that's the information that's being thrown at you. And so that frustrated us. And then the other piece of it is that in our own personal and professional lives, we both played college sports. We both have had children who played college sports. We worked in college admission and helped prospective student athletes. We have coached kids who've gone on to play in college. I did academic advising in my university experience for student athletes. So from every perspective, participant, parent, advisor, admission officer, coach, we have touched athletic recruiting in some way. So it's really helped us frame the kind of questions to ask so that students can navigate. And the last two pieces that I'll say before I dive in are that you're going to find that we're going to swing pretty radically back and forth between the philosophical and the practical. Okay, this is not going to be a deep dive into NCAA because that'll just put you to sleep. That's just not that interesting. All right? But how to navigate the process, okay, is really the reason why we're here. And the last thing that I will say is that we feel strongly, and we know this is the case just because of our own experience, but coaching, advising, being part of kids' athletic lives. If you want to have an athletic experience in college, and have that be part of the way in which you frame your higher education time, you can do it 100%. I used to coach an intramural tackle football team where my nose guard was like 120 pounds. Right? And I would say to him, if you want to play college football, I can find a place for you to play college football. And it's true. Okay? So your ability to navigate the process and be part of it, and to have that experience, you can do it. But you have to learn how to ask the right questions, you have to learn how to do the right research, you have to learn how to be in communication, and some other fundamental things that we're going to get into. All right, so let's get out, let's get it rolling here. That's not a good start. Okay. You try yours. is they'll come into the office and they'll say, okay, Becker, DF, I want to play sports at college. We immediately turn that question back upon the prospective student athlete, okay, and say, well, what do you mean by that? Because the answer to that question, what do you mean when you want to play sports in college, when you play sports in college, engenders a whole other set of questions that have to be answered before you dive into the athletic recruiting stream. Right? So we move into that. Okay, so if you say, I want to play sports in college, okay, let's break that down. Is what you're saying, that I consider myself a top-end athlete, I'm a D1 dog, I'm going to be a scholarship athlete, right? I am at the top 1% of that group. Right? That's what I want. Right? Or, right, is it just like you want to play any place to play your sport? You're playing soccer since you were 6 years old on normal travel teams, it's the way you organize your summers, the way you organize your falls, right? You play indoor in the winter and you just want to keep playing soccer somewhere. Is it that scholarship aid piece that I talked about? And that has its challenges as you try to work your way through navigating college costs. In our environment, we have a lot of students who just simply want to improve their college options. They've got a great academic life, they've got a great athletic life. They know if they put those two things together, right, they might be able to gain access to an institution that one on its own might not be able to do. We have a lot of kids who want to do that. Okay? So again, simple question. I want to play sports in college. Right, what do you mean by that? Suddenly we're breaking this down, right, into more sections. And now we keep going. Okay, so if you were that person who's saying, yeah, I want to play Division I, that's my goal, that's what I want to do. Okay, when you say Division I, you're sitting there and thinking to yourself, I want to play at Georgetown, at Duke, at USC, at Stanford. Right, that's what I mean. That's what I mean when I say I want to play Division I. I'm not thinking about Utah State. Okay, I'm not thinking about the University of Central Florida. Okay, I have a vision of what I think Division I is. I want to play, field hockey at Princeton. Okay, all right, this is going to lead you in a different direction. If you want to play Division I, do you have to be recruited? Do you have to have a guaranteed spot on the team? Are you willing to work for your playing time, work for your spot on, for your jersey? And are you willing to risk being cut to be on Division I team? You're going to work your way into your scholarship, for example. Right? And do you have regional preferences? Do you want, prospective student athletes? Do you want your parents to see you play? Right? Or are you playing in Southern California, and the only time that they're going to see you play at University of San Diego is when you come east for a tournament, all right? Or on the video stream. Okay. So again, this is we get the basic question. Now we're breaking it down into further parts, and we're going to keep going. Okay. If you're the person who's sitting there saying, "I just want to find a place to play my sport," right? I just love basketball. I want to play basketball in college. I want to find a place to do it. I want to get a good education. As I said, you can do it. These are the student athletes that are the easiest to work with. Right? And I always throw out my cousin, who was not a very good soccer player. He was a goalie. And he wanted to get he wanted to play soccer in college, and he wanted to get into a good teacher education program. So we ended up going to a Division II University of Maine satellite campus, played soccer for 4 years as a 4-year goalie, did their teacher education program, and now is a superintendent of schools up in New Hampshire. He set his goals. That's what he wanted. Good teacher education program, play soccer in college, found it, got it, have a nice life. Okay? So if you're just trying to find a place to play your sport, you can open that up. Right? Do you want to, are you willing to think about Division III? Most people on the East Coast don't know what the NAIA is. Right? The NAIA has $45 million in scholarship opportunities available. The program stretches from South Florida to British Columbia. Right? Incredible athletic opportunities at the NAIA. Not very well known on the East Coast. Again, you have selectivity preferences, you open to different kinds of colleges. If you just want to find a place to play your sport, you're going to be able to do it. As I mentioned, the scholarship-based piece is really complicated. Right? Because different institutions are going to set it up in different ways. Division II is oftentimes regional institutions are less expensive, and they have some money set aside in Division II and NAIA if you want to do that. Are you willing to walk on to get your scholarship? Again, I talk often about a student of mine who wanted to be a Division I scholarship player, ended up at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, and called me when he was a junior and said, DF, I got my scholarship. I'm a scholarship football player. Now, he had to go to Tennessee and play 1AA to be able to do it, but he did, because he set his goals, and that's what he came after. Okay? So, again, your selectivity restrictions, regional restrictions, division restrictions, you have to sort of decide where you fit and what you're willing to do and what you're willing to give up in order to have that. So then finally, that last group, that notion of the student athlete who wants to just improve their college option. right? If you're sitting there going, yeah, I want to play highly selective, I want to play, I want to play soccer at Georgetown, and the Georgetown coach says, nah, you really can't play for me. And that keeps on happening. Are you willing to drop down to Division III in order to continue playing your sport, right? Are you willing to totally let go if you can't find someone who's going to support your experience? And in fact, in the South, some of the best club teams in the SAC are better than Division III programs in the Northeast, right? So are you willing to consider playing club in order to have that intercollegiate option? And we have kids who've gone down to play hockey in the SAC, and they play an SEC schedule. They go to Alabama, they go to Vanderbilt, right? They spend the weekends on the road playing hockey across the South. It's a great experience, right? So again, that restricted list of potential colleges. We're on the East Coast, we're in the Mid-Atlantic. A lot of our kids are like, now I want the Centennial, I want the NESCAC, I want Tufts, I want Williams, and that's where they put all of their focus. Whereas if they're willing to open that up a little bit and go down to Virginia and go into the ODAC, right, or move into the UAA conference, right, and find all these incredible Division III options, right? Places like Denison and Ohio, Westland, they are psyched to have kids from the East Coast come out and play sports with them. But again, you have to sort of open that up a little bit in order to improve your college options. When you think about college recruiting writ large, okay, that student who's the Division I athlete, the one who's going to sign the national letter of intent, right? Whether or not there's any, because a national letter of intent does not imply any kind of scholarship. You just receive some grant with some money from the school. It's usually book money. Right? That's all you get if you sign the national letter of intent. Okay? But if your academic standing meets the NCAA requirements, which right now with no standardized testing is a wide open hole to go through. Okay? You meet the sliding scale, you're in business. You get the official offer of support from a coach, you're in great shape. Now, Division III, non-scholarship, or places that have a little bit of an extra focus, again, that's the Ivies, that's Duke, that's Stanford, that are going to be, they want to make sure you're going to be successful, okay? Right? Your academic standing has to fit that institution, right? And you have to have a coach who's going to support you in the process, who's going to tag you or support you or whatever language that they use. But then the admission office has to take all those pieces of the puzzle together and say, yes, okay, we're going to support this. Okay, we think they're going to be successful. The coaches put them high enough on the list that we think this works. Boom. All right, they're going to put you in the class. Okay, so Division III model. And if you start to think about all of those goals, all those answers to those questions, Division I, is it scholarship? What's the regional preference? What's the selectivity preference? Or all those pieces of the puzzle that you're trying to put in simultaneously, right? If you're sitting there going, okay, I want to play hockey in the Northeast at a highly selective school with a guaranteed spot on the team, right? Or basketball, a good low number sport. That's the goal you're trying to hit. Because you're putting all of those things together simultaneously. Right? In isolation, you might be able to do it. But when they're all done, when they're all sort of incorporated concurrently, it gets harder and harder, right? Which is what leads us to sort of the big picture philosophy behind what goes on in athletic recruiting. The more restrictions you place on their goals, the harder they're going to be able to achieve, right? I just want to play track, I just want to run track somewhere. Done. And get a great education. It's going to happen, right? I want to run track at USC and get a scholarship. Okay, suddenly that Venn diagram is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Okay, and that's the sort of lens that you have to go into when you start to enter the athletic recruiting stream. Your goals will be constantly reevaluated. You'll have coaches that are excited for you to come play for them, and coaches that will say you cannot play for them. And now then you have to figure out what you want to do. Right? You may have an admission office looks at your transcript and they go, no, we're not going to do this. Or when it says this is great, you should apply early. Right? And you might be thinking about other options. I don't know if I want to apply early there. Now you got to reevaluate your goals all over again. Right? So it's this constant reevaluation process. But the thing that we hammer with our kids more than anything, right, is the notion that for the prospective student athlete, the ultimate responsibility to navigate the process, to ask the questions, to listen to the answers, and to follow through from the first time you talk to a coach all the way through the graduation is the student athletes. It's not the parents, it's not the club coach, it's not the high school coach. Right? It is the prospective student athlete's responsibility to both navigate it and follow through on it as they go through it. Because you're the one that, as a student athlete, you're doing the 6 a.m. lifts. You're adhering to the T rules. Right? Your club coach isn't doing it. Right? So just sort of taking on that responsibility and navigating it yourself is incredibly important. And as you have to think about, I want to play sports in college, what do I have to do? That's one of the biggest ones. you take on responsibility yourself.
So we're going to shift direction a little bit more, but first I want to just take a minute to think through, what does that mean? What are some of those responsibilities? So I just sort of laid it out here for you. One is definitely preparation. You have to make sure that you have the record that's going to help you be recruited, right? That's going to make it easy for the colleges to recruit you. So you're working hard, whatever grade you're in right now, your transcript matters. You're here for athletic recruiting, but you're like, check this out. You're a scholar athlete, so you really need to work on your transcript too. You need to make sure your standardized testing is in play. You need to do all that goal setting that he was talking about. Like, this is a big deal, okay? And it sounds, sometimes people think, oh, athletic recruiting, great, I'll just do that. Here comes a train, I'm gonna hop on that train and go to that college, okay? That can be done, but is that the best choice for you? And we're gonna drill into why, some of the questions you might ask to help you figure out what your goals are. The communication piece of it is vital. Okay, we're going to put you into a really important communication role with your coaches, with the colleges, with your counselors, with all the adults on the campus where you are now and going forward. Okay? There's a lot to evaluate in terms of the programs, and I'm going to give you just going to poke some thoughts into your brains about that. How do you know what matters to you, and what kind of decisions do you have to make? But that's on you. Okay, that's really on you. When you hear some of this stuff, I want you to ping a few notes in your head and think, okay, I got to remember that. I got to ask that question. I got to find this out. It's the preparation and performance and responsibility to a team, also a big deal. Okay, we'll talk more about that, but the teams are going to expect a lot of you if you're a scholar athlete, and you have to be willing to buy into that. Ability to handle uncertainty and adversity. That's something that not very many people who are thinking about being a recruited athlete think about very often. But guess what? You really need to, because the people who get recruited are used to not having very much adversity when it comes to their sports. You tend to be the people who are the best ones on the team. You're getting all the trophies. And suddenly you get to college with all those other people who've had that same experience. So you're going to be fighting your way through that program and you got to be ready, right? We're not saying it can't be done. It definitely can be done, but you got to be ready to handle some of the adversity and not wilt the first time you sit on the bench and watch the game from the sidelines instead of center field. And then finally, that communication on campus is a big deal. Okay, you're going to be the person who's talking to these coaches. You're going to be the ones who are advocating for yourself with the faculty, with your advisors, so that you have the optimal experience when you're there. Okay, so just as Jeff talked about, you're the one setting your goals and thinking about things. Kids also say, okay, you got through all those goals. We're talking about that. And then the next question that we're going to ask them is, okay, what are you willing to sacrifice and gain? Sacrifice in order to gain an experience as a scholar athlete in college. What does that mean? What actually do you want your college experience to look like? So we're going to talk about this from an academic level, a personal level, the divisional level, okay? Because different divisions are going to expect different things of you. And then also I want to take a minute to talk about what it takes to be really a successful intercollegiate athlete. So going into this, what do I need to do when I get there to make it really work? So from an academic perspective, if you think about college, just for a second, pause and think. You think about college and you're like, okay, it's college. I've done high school. It's all the same. Just next step in my academic experience. Well, the reality is, when you get to college, it's different, okay? There's a lot more free time, there's not very good advice, and you really have to, focus your energy in certain ways. People aren't telling you what to take all the time. There's a tremendous amount of independence that comes with it. As a scholar athlete, you actually end up bypassing some of those harder transitions to college academics because you have a much more disciplined life. You actually have places to go and people who you're accountable to while you're in college, and that's really different than the sort of typical non-athlete student in college. So your life's a little more disciplined and organized. You have people who are actually taking their advising of you really seriously. When we go visit our alums in college, they're usually like, oh my God, the advice around here is terrible. It's really hard to get good advice from faculty members. The professors don't really care. And so they force themselves into that space to get good advice. But a lot of athletes, basically most schools are going to be heavily invested in the success of their athletes, and so they know there's extra pressures on them, so they put really good advisors into the world of their athletes. Okay, they have standards that they have to uphold. They're part of the success of an athletic program at a university is actually connected to what the graduation rate of their athletes is and their GPAs. Like it's a point of pride and it's a metric that they track. So they're going to make sure that you do this well. Okay, some places are going to put you in study halls. Some people are going to places are going to put tutors on your bus. Okay, but they want you to succeed, and why is that different? I mean, you're used to being in an environment where your parents want you to succeed, your teachers want you to succeed, but in college, the only person who gets to see your transcript is you. Parents don't get your grades, okay? But coaches get your grades, okay? Athletic directors get your grades, and they care, okay? That's actually good for you, right? It's good to have to be accountable to someone besides yourself. From a downside perspective, kind of quickly, you can imagine, there's much more time stressors. You're going to be traveling far. Sometimes, this is a weird one, you're going to get restricted access to some majors and classes. If you want to be pre-med, there are coaches and colleges that will say, if you want to be pre-med and be an athlete, you need to do all of your pre-med work in the summer because our labs that are focused on the pre-med track happen in the afternoon and they conflict with your practices, so you can't take those courses. Okay? That's kind of weird. That's shocking if that's something that you want, but it's not impossible. It's just something you're going to have to ask about. So again, I want you to start the wheels turning. Like, what matters to me? What are those questions I'm going to ask? When you start looking at colleges, if we have juniors or seniors in the room, when you start really looking, you'll see some of them will have a huge commitment to internships. No classes on Fridays because everybody does internships. Or a huge commitment to study abroad, right? That 65% of our students go study abroad for this college. And if you're a college athlete, sometimes those opportunities aren't available to you because of the restrictions they're going to place on you, right? Not all the same, but it's something to keep an eye on. And then the last bullet point, I think, is one that really makes my blood boil, and I hope you'll sort of pay attention to it, which is that almost everywhere, college athletes are going to find professors and peers who devalue their intellect. They're going to forget about the scholar part of that scholar athlete name, and they're going to think, oh, you're only here because you play baseball. You put your, one of our valedictorians was this amazing rower, went to Harvard a long time ago, and he was our valedictorian. It's an incredibly competitive school, okay? So the guy was brilliant, actually, and he happened to also recruit. As soon as he put his jacket on, he was like, people were like, you don't care about that. You're just here because of that. You don't really matter. Your brain isn't part of this equation. That's crazy. Okay, that's flat out crazy. I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about how to avoid that and to make sure that you compensate for it so it doesn't happen to you. But it's something you want to know. Okay, from a personal, I'll go faster through this one. The personal life, it kind of runs the same trajectory. You can kind of imagine the same things. You already know what some of the upsides of being on a team are, right? You know it's great to have a group of peers, teammates, people to live with, people to eat with. You have this structure, you're representing your school, you put on your uniform, and people down the street cheering for you, right? They're like, I saw you in the paper, this is so great. That's really uplifting for you. Of course, you're going to get all the sort of leadership and character development that comes with being part of sport. Interestingly, you're also going to get tapped into some really lively and deep networks around jobs on campus, jobs after college, internships. I played 2 sports in college, and the coaches of the teams that I played for a long time ago, not my coaches, they're like gone by now, but those coaches still call me and say, hey, Holly, I have 2 girls who want to get involved in education careers. Would you talk to them? I'm like, sure. They're part of my team, right? Like, I still have an allegiance to those teams, and that is exponentially well developed out in the world. Okay, so when you join a team, it's another really funny, interesting question to ask is, are there any paths for this team? My nephew played lacrosse at Bucknell, and I think half of his team went to work for Abercrombie and Fitch right out of college. It was crazy. It was like this little path. They just kept going that way. Okay, limitations. The downsides are going to be you're going to have more to do, right? Limitations on your time. You're going to lose some of your freedoms. There are places where they will tell you whether you can join fraternities or sororities. They will tell you whether you need to live with the teammates or eat with the teammates always. You're going to have people who might be reaching into your lives saying, no, 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 don't do community service. You can't, or maybe they say do community service, but do it with our team. Like they're going to shape your experience and restrict you a little bit more. I think that, again, shortened vacation, that makes sense. Actually, we were just visiting a college yesterday, and the place was a ghost town. They're already on break, except the only students that we saw on that campus were basketball players, hockey players, and swimmers. And there, you could just tell, only students walking around that campus, and it's, the beginning of December. You got a long road till they actually get to leave for that holiday. It's fine. It's fun, actually. You're with your teammates. You're training really hard. It's like boot camp, but you got to know it's going to happen, right? What you want? So is this like one size fits all? Absolutely not. Typically, D1 schools are going to have more reach into your life, more control over what you're doing. It's like the big upside of being D1, but it's also, maybe the downside is that you may find some places that are going to really control you. Some people say it's like you have a full-time job if you're playing the D1 sport. It's not far off. That's our experience talking to kids. It's not far off. They really have a very detailed plan for you throughout your college experience. One of my daughters who played a sport, when she played a fall sport, and when she was done, she's like, whoa, I had no idea. What do these people do with their time? Like so many hours back into her day. It was really interesting. She was shocked. I think that, again, even within D1, it's not one size fits all. Like, the difference between the Bucknell football team's schedule when they go to play games on the weekend compared to like the Alabama one, wildly different. Okay, Alabama leaves on Wednesday, they have all their tutors on the bus, they're off they go. Bucknell leaves probably Friday after classes, right? And travels to their team. So it's different, it depends on the sport, it depends on the team. D3 tends to be a more balanced affirmation of like the scholar athlete life. It's more like high school, but less so than it used to be. There are more opportunities, although dwindling, for two sport athletes at D3 level right now. But they try, I think the D3 coaches and colleges in general try very hard to preserve the full experience of the college for the athletes. So they might restrict you more during your season, but give you ways to solve the, I really want to study abroad. How do I do that and still play soccer? Okay? So it's kind of interesting. Promised you I'd give you a little peek into the window of successful habits and behaviors of scholar athletes. These ones kind of rock students when they read about them. They're thinking, okay, it's my times, it's my strength training, it's how good I am at playing lacrosse. It's actually commitment, discipline, organization, like this self-regulation and motivation. You really have to be good at self-monitoring your sleep, your eating habits, okay, your studying habits. College, anything you imagine about college is so many freedoms, and your most college dorms on a Friday night empty out at about 10 o'clock because everybody's off to go enjoy their freedoms. You've got a game the next day, it's highly likely that your team expectations are going to be that you're in bed at like 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night. One of those daughters of mine who played sports in college asked for her at first Christmas, she's like, just please get me noise-canceling headphones that I can sleep in because it's so noisy after, sort of late at night that I need sleep. You just have to know it's coming so you're ready for it and you're okay with it. Those team rules are alive and well. Okay? Those are something you're going to want to know from the coaches and the kids on the team when you're actually exploring them. Self-advocacy with professors, I promised you I'd come back around to that. You are going to find some people who devalue your intellect, but you're also going to have the capacity to influence that. You're not going to sit in the back row of your classes. You're going to be a presence. You're going to make yourself known to the professors. You're going to ask them, let them know that you're going to be missing classes because you're on an away weekend. But you're going to ask them for the notes. You're going to talk to the people in your, who are in a group project with you and say, hey, I'm going to be gone next weekend. This thing's due on Monday. We need to do this early in the week so I can do my part. Okay, that's putting your seriousness of purpose out on the table. And I think it's really important. We talked a little bit about humility and resilience in the face of setbacks already, but you need to be ready. You need to be ready to fight your way onto the field or onto the court for your playing time. Okay, it's exciting. That challenge and failure sometimes helps you really grow as an athlete. But you need to be ready for it mentally and emotionally so that you can just dig into it and be excited about it. And you're definitely going to get a big old summer and off-season training program. Very big. I coach field hockey now, and we tell our kids, oh yeah, here's what we're going to test at the end. But come back in the summer in shape, and some of them do and some of them don't. If that's college, college sends you a huge book before you even get there, and you are so accountable for that. If you want to find your way really quickly off of a team in college, don't do the training. Go for it.
Okay, as I mentioned right at the very beginning, we're going to swing kind of wildly back and forth between the philosophical and the practical. That's a lot of the philosophy. What are the questions you need to ask? What are the answers that you need to incorporate in your plans? How is your personal experience going to be? Your academic experience going to be? Differences in visions. What do I want to get out of my experience? So if you're a prospective student athlete in the room tonight, you're sitting there going, okay, I think I'm starting to figure this out. What I want. How do I do it? Right, so that's what we're going to get into right now. So if there are adults in the room who are student athletes in college or coaches, this sort of sequence will make sense because this is what it was like 25 years ago. Right, this is what would happen. You would know after July 1, after your junior year, between your junior and your senior year, that's when you could start getting phone calls. Right? So when that happened, if you get a phone call that first week, you knew you were in business. Right? Then you were on the weekly call list. Right? Then you might be invited to campus and you do official visits. And it would happen in a really neat and nice sequence so you could understand what was happening in terms of athletic recruiting. Right? Now this model has been entirely exploded. This is the biggest difference in the 21st century. Part of the reason why we're coming at it this way. Okay? Because for some student athletes, this could happen instantaneously. It could happen in 9th and 10th grade. Right? Or for others, it could wait and not kick in until October, November, December of the senior year. Okay? The sequence has been completely upended. And that's what makes it really hard for families and students to kind of figure out. However, the sequence itself, identification, evaluation, recruitment, commitment, that still holds true. It's just the timeline on how quickly it could or might not move. Okay? That is what we want to hold on to. So we're going to walk you through how to get yourself, especially for self-recruiters, not the ones who are going to sign a national letter of intent in the first signing window. Okay? But how do you walk through this? How do you take care of it? So that's where we're going to go. Okay? So we'll start with identification. Right? And we freely acknowledge that this slide violates every law of PowerPoint. Okay? But the idea behind it is that once you went at the identification stage, there are so many different ways for you to get this process going. Every single program in the country has a graduate assistant, an assistant coach, a recruiting coordinator, somebody whose job it is to maintain the recruiting database. And you want to get in that database. All right, so it could be a letter of introduction, it could be an athletic resume, it can be their own research, it can be coach outreach. There's all kinds of ways for you to be able to get in that database. And in fact, if any of you go back tonight after this program or go home and whip out your computer, right, and pick 10 colleges that you think you might want to play at, go on their website, find the athletic website, find the recruiting questionnaire, fill it out, put all your relevant information in there, right, do that 10 times. Tomorrow morning, you will have 4 emails from coaches. Right? Most often, it's going to be inviting you to their summer camp, right? Hoping that you will come and be part of their roster and pay to be a part of that experience. Right? So you're not being recruited, but you have been identified. And that's the first step. Because after that, right, then they're going to start to figure out whether you can play for them, whether the admission office is going to support you, and where you fit within the recruiting timeline. All of these things. So this is all stuff that I was just referencing. We'll have students who set up their own YouTube channel to put all their game tape up there. Okay? Right? You can control all of this. right? When you're figuring out from talking to your club coaches and your high school coaches, what are the appropriate summer camps? And we'll talk a little bit about how you figure out the difference between performance, showcase, and just pure participatory, right? But you can enter this identification stream, and all you need to do is just to have your relevant data, academic, personal, right, and athletic. Know what matters, right? We have a really powerful crew program in Lawrenceville, and we know that it's the 2K and the 4K ERG. That makes a difference. You want to grow in college? Get on that ERG. Doesn't even matter if you have a crew team in your high school. If that's what you want to do, start pulling, right? And a coach will tell you, when you get to 620 in your 2K, call me. And off we go. Okay? So you'll get the information and the feedback as you go through with it, right? So the idea is, as I said, just to get yourself identified, get as many databases as possible. And you know coaches are out there casting a huge wide net. Right? There's been hundreds of kids that they put in that database and start to whittle it down. You can do the same thing. Right? You shouldn't be limited to these 5 schools or these 10 schools. Right? Open that up and find out what coaches are going to do. Because then once you're in that database, then they're going to start to evaluate you.
Yeah, and one of the things that we say to our students all the time is, like, don't sit around waiting to be identified.
100%.
Get yourself out there. You can control that. That's the self. Okay, so the evaluation stage, as Jeff said, as soon as you've been identified, they start evaluating you. Okay, they try to figure out, is this somebody who could play for me? Is this someone who could be an important component of my team? So they're going to evaluate you in lots of different ways, not quite as many as identified, right? But it's normal things. They're going to be trying to understand if you have the academic credentials to be recruitable. They're going to be carefully looking at your game tapes. They're going to be looking at all of those metrics that are important to their particular team. Summer camp evaluations, they all run summer camps, right? And they are going to find out, they want to use summer camps to try to evaluate you. They're going to be making comparisons between, you and the league you play in compared to ones that are, across the state and in completely different corners of the country. They're going to be doing whatever they can to really understand what you're like as an athlete and what your potential is to impact their team. So from a self-recruiter perspective, what do you actually do that can, you're gonna make it easy for them to evaluate you. Okay, you don't want to be like a mystery person, right? So one of the things they are gonna do is at some point, if they start getting really interested in you, they want to see your transcript. You might send your transcript 6 or 7 times to a coach, which is really strange. When you're like introducing yourself to the coach, saying, hey, I'm a serious high school student who wants to play, we're looking for a great opportunity. Here's my transcript, here's my resume. And they won't look at it, but suddenly they're going to see something or hear something from a coach and say, I want to know more about this kid. I wonder what their transcript looks like. You want to have a fresh transcript, a transcript that's actually ready, because every semester you're going to get a new transcript. So have a copy ready for you. Jeff mentioned the YouTube links. Like if you're going to be putting your highlight tape onto the YouTube, that thing needs to be fresh. Okay, you don't need to update it every week, but you definitely need to update it after every significant season, including the summers. So you're going to make sure that everything's sort of humming along so the best version of you as an athlete is out there. Many times, I heard we have some soccer players in the group. There's soccer, lots of showcase tournaments, right, for a soccer team. So you're going to go to those tournaments, and part of the reason you're going is so that you can be seen. You want to help yourself be seen, right? You're going to reach out to those coaches that you've already started to think about and have some kind of relationship with and say, hey, coach, I'm going to the Sunburst tournament this week. I'm number 15 on the Eagles, and here's our schedule. I hope you're going to get a chance to see me play. If you've ever been to one of those things and watched the coaches, they're easily identifiable. They walk around with little iPads, and they plug in all their information, and they have a schedule, and you want to be on their schedule so that they come watch your game. So you don't want to count on the perfect alignment of having them walk by the field and seeing you score this beautiful goal and be like, whoa, who's number 15? I want to recruit them. Who's that? I got to go find out. What team is this again? No, you want a plan, okay? You want to give yourself a head start to be really well evaluated. Jeff mentioned, excuse me, summer camps. Summer camps are gold mine for college coaches to actually do some recruiting. They get to sometimes coach people and see what you're like to coach. Okay, it's one thing if you're good, but if you're not coachable, they're not interested. So they have these camps, they make a ton of money on these camps, okay? You want to pick your camps carefully. Okay? You want to go to camps where the coaches who actually might recruit you are coaching. I always say my field hockey team, I love them, they're great, it's a wonderful team. Down the road from our school is Princeton University. They always end up in the Final Four, or almost always the Final Four of the National Field Hockey Tournament. Our kids are like, oh, we can play for Princeton. You're like, no, you can't. Like 3 of you in 40 years could play for them. Okay, don't go to Princeton's camp. That lady has a big boat because of all the people like you who will go to her camp and pay the fees so she can watch her recruits and get a lot of money out of people who think they could do that. Okay, pick the camp. You know, our kids are really well suited to go to a camp that has like the top 60 coaches. It's like all the NESCAC coaches, all the lesser level IB teams that aren't as good as Princeton, you know, the Patriot League, like some really great, Centennial League, like really great coaches where our kids can play. If they go to those camps, they get seen by so many coaches. That's great. And then the other thing about camp, it's not camp, it's a tryout. So show up in shape, be ready, you know, be on your best athletic and character self when you show up, right? Like you don't just like, I'm here, that's all that matters. No, you're actually trying out for their team, so you want to know that going into it. I think that's good. So when we talk about those highlight tapes, I mean, it's really connected. If you're going to create something like that, you're creating something that's geared toward what the coaches want to see. So maybe you're the top hitter in your baseball or softball team, right? Maybe you're like, you have this incredible batting average. So do they want to just see you hit, so the highlight tape just batting average, batting, you know, bat all your home runs? No, or all the goals you scored in their soccer team because you're the high scorer in the state. No, they know you're going to, I mean, sure, they want to see some of the goals you score, but they want to see you playing. They want to see what happens when you're like the batter down in the count, right? You're like really up against the odds. They want to see a soccer player make a mistake and make up for it. They want to see what kind of a teammate you are. So you have to sort of loop in, lock into what matters to these coaches. And sometimes you're going to get information like that from coaches. Okay, when you go to a camp, they'll talk about what do we want to see, but you want to keep it fresh. You want to give them context, and you want to make sure that they're out. You're sending those links out to those coaches.
Oh, before we move on to evaluation, let me just throw out there here's something to keep in the back of your mind. Again, this is for the prospective student athlete. One thing that's easy to forget is that you are always being evaluated. Your communication with the coach is being evaluated. When you go onto a campus and do an unofficial visit and you arrive with your father or your mother, who talks to the coach? They evaluate that. Is it the student athlete or is it the parent? Right? At every turn, whether you're again talking about soccer, whether you're off ball and everything's happening in a different section of the field, guess what? They're evaluating you. I did a program for wrestling. Division I wrestling. I got going up to the Rutgers coach, talked to the Rutgers coach after it and said, so like, when you recruit, what do you look for when you go to these big tournaments and there's 200, there's 20 mats? What do you look for? He said, I watch what happens when kids lose. Do they throw their head here? Do they go stomp off into a corner? Do they talk to their coach and try to get better? Right? They're always being evaluated. Okay? So you've gone through the identification stage. You've been in touch with coaches. You're in the database. You're getting some feedback. Right? You're sending them the links. You're starting to get evaluated. You're starting to get some nibbles. People are interested. It's like, hey, you sent me a transcript. When are you going to take your SATs? I want to look up more information. Are you doing this summer camp? Are you doing this tournament? I want to see what's happening. Right? So you're getting the process is going. Okay? Then you move into active recruitment. And here's where it starts to get a little bit complicated, and where you have to be like you got to get your kind of head wrapped around the way in which athletic recruiting works. As I mentioned, this is the way it used to be, right? Very clear, sequential. You knew exactly where you were as you moved through the process. Right? Now that's been exploded. Okay, so we've certainly reoriented the way in which we help our students go through this. Okay, so again, you may be on the call list, you may be on the contact list. Right? So we will talk to our student athletes and use phrases that help them understand what's going on. And this is one of the first kind of mantras that you should take away. Right? Is this notion of when you enter the recruitment stage, how you figure out where you stand is to think about the communication going back and forth between you and the coach, and it's the frequency, it's the style, and the direction. How often is it happening? Right? Who's creating it? Who's initiating it? The direction? And what is the information that's in that communication? Are you getting a blast that says, hey, just wanted to let you know what took place last weekend at our big track meet, and this person set their PR, blah, 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 right? Okay, that style's interesting. You want to know what's happening with their track team. Or is it a direct message that came to you, right, through X, Twitter, right, that says, hey, I looked at your right, updated tape, from your last game, and you play exactly like my captain who graduated last year. I want to see more of your tape, okay? Right, how often is the communication coming? Who's initiating that communication? Right? That frequency, style, and direction will tell you everything about where you fit. And every once in a while, I'll have a student come in the fall and say, hey, guess what? I'm being recruited by the Franklin Marshall football coach. I said, that's awesome. When's the last time you talked to the coach? April. So I hate to tell you, you're not being recruited if the last time you talked to the coach was April. Okay? Because that frequency just wasn't there. Okay? Right? And now, if as you go through this, okay, we get back to the responsibility piece, right, for that student athlete, right? You have to be, like, your information has to be well organized. Coaches are not hired for their organizational ability most of the time, right? So being able to know exactly, I tell the kids that I work with, right, if you're having a conversation with a coach, things are moving along, you think things are going well, at the end of every conversation with every coach, we share a Google folder, right? And if you talk to the Cornell coach, you write down exactly what the conversation was about, and most importantly, what's supposed to happen next. Right? Asking forward-thinking conversations about the recruiting timeline. So, coach, if I understand you correctly, you want me to send my end of the year junior transcript and my May SAT so that you can get my academic information in front of an admission officer, and then we'll talk about whether or not I'm going to do an unofficial visit in the fall. Coach, you want to conclude your timeline by the first week of August. So I should call you back at the end of July to find out where I stand among the other goalies that you're recruiting. Is that right? Right? It sounds a little scary, right, for a 17 or 18-year-old to have those kinds of conversations with a coach, especially if that's somebody you want to support you. Right? But coaches do not mind that contact at all. They want clarity. Right? They want you to know where you stand. They might not be able to tell you everything you want to know. Okay? But asking forward-thinking questions so that it's very clear what's supposed to happen next, who's supposed to initiate it, and what the next stage of the process is, helps you, it helps your family, it helps your counselor. It's exactly the way you want to go. Okay? The official visits and the unofficial visits. So official visits, the NCAA allows for 5 official visits at Division I level, even if you're being recruited for multiple sports. Official visits don't necessarily happen as much as they used to in the past. Now it's more of like a victory lap after you've signed your NLI or you've already made a reciprocal commitment. So we don't get into details about the official visits too much, because if you're getting invited to multiple unofficial visits, you're just going to show up anyway and do an unofficial and see multiple schools. So I'm not going to sort of deep dive into the unofficial visits because it doesn't necessarily tell you as much of where you want to go. You're going to find out from the coach when you start to figure out who's going to initiate and what are going to be the reciprocity that takes place in the commitment stage.
Okay, so the commitment stage is the final stage in your recruiting process. It's really closing the deal from the athletic side and the student athlete side. So it comes in many shapes and sizes these days. As Jeff said, official visits is one of them. Sometimes it's leading up to. Sometimes you have to go to official visit, and then after the official visit, they're going to ask you to commit. Some are going to do it in like that victory lap. The NLIs, the thing that you see in the papers or on social media a lot, people like sitting there with their parents or their coaches signing their shirt on or their cap. It's a big day. But that's back to like the big national like D1 scholarship sports. If you ever, and the Ivies don't do that, okay? So if schools if you see somebody like signing their NLI to an Ivy, that's actually not true. They're not. It's a fake. It represents a big moment for them being committed, and they got their likely letter maybe, but that's not. There's no like NLI. Likely letters are a weird little device of the Ivies, which gets athletes a full committed read before off of in advance of the normal admission cycle. Some colleges, especially D3, will just say, it's a commitment between the student and the coach. The coach is going to put the full weight of their support behind that applicant in the admissions process. But the athlete gets to just apply right during their early decision, so that and then they hear their news when they get in early decision with everybody else in their school who applied to the same school. Okay, so it comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes. As we get through this, what you'll find is you're always on the lookout for information about how the colleges that are recruiting you work their process. Like, when will I know I'm committed? There's a lot of questions you need to ask during that. But the most important thing to realize is that the coach is saying, I'm going to support you fully in admissions, do everything I possibly can, you're one of my slots or whatever. And the student's saying, if you do that and I get in, I'm coming. Okay, full commitment there. Go ahead. So, what does that mean for the self-recruiter in this point? The most important thing you can do during the commitment stage, if you ever start hearing the conversation moving into a commitment phase, is you ask good questions. Okay, find out exactly what you're committing to. Find out whether there's any hurdles remaining before you get to that commitment stage. Bring your counselor into the conversation. Bring your coach and your parents into that conversation. Multiple ears on that is going to get you the best sense of what you're committing to and what the timeline is for this to actually wrap up, okay, in the way you want it. Here's another one of our mantras: knowing the difference between hearing, listening, and understanding. It's really easy when things start moving into an encouraging stage to start to hear things that you're interpreting as they're asking me to commit, but they're not really yet. Okay, you want to get to the bottom of it, and you want to just make sure you understand exactly what's going on when you get to that commitment stage.
So even that kind of both sort of integrated practical and philosophical sequence, right? You're going to be identified, evaluated, recruited, and then talk to the coach about being committed. Seems really straightforward, right? Just working your way through the steps of the process. What makes it challenging from our perspective, for prospective student athletes and their families especially though, is that there's not one set sequence or timeline across sports, divisions, conferences, and that makes it very complicated. So one of the things that you move into that you want to figure out is, what is the timeline and the sequence and the deadlines for your sport and the division that you're targeting? Right? There was a long time, it slowed down a little bit, where things like softball and volleyball for girls, they were being done in the 9th and 10th grade, all committed to Division I programs. Right? Super, super early. Right? That sort of changed back a little bit. Lacrosse has helped to pull that back. Right? But you're going to find that even within individual schools, right? If you ask any athletic director at a high school or a college, okay, whether they treat all sports equally, that AD is going to say, oh yes, we treat all sports equally. Some sports are more equal than others. And colleges work that way. It's the same, and it can be at the same Division I program. Or it can be, one of the things that takes place is that in the NCAA, you could be a Division III program, right, and have a Division I sport. And the sequence, again, same school, operates very differently. Okay? So the Johns Hopkins women's soccer players are not going to find out what's happening until usually December of their senior year. Okay? We have a very powerful lacrosse team. We have kids who will sign NLIs in the first opening window of their junior year who have never played for us. Okay? But their sequence collapsed. Right? So again, same school, right? Two different sports, two different timelines. So we start talking about figuring out that sequence. You ask a coach, when do you like to settle your recruiting lists? We have some that want to be done in July, even though there's some kids may slip through the cracks. And others that are going to say, no, I'm going to wait till the middle of November. Because the best Division III coaches, to be perfectly honest, the best Division III coaches do not recruit Division III kids. They recruit the Division I kids, who were the 10th person on a 9-person list. Right? And they can play there, but they didn't get tagged. Okay? So different timelines, different sports. Right? So we're back to the wacky Venn diagrams all over again. But ask those questions of your coaches, and the coaches that you're in, the college coaches you're in communication with, because you need to find out what the sequence and the timeline is for your sport in your division, and particularly at those schools.
So we're going to shift gears again. I think just to give you a sense of where we're going and sort of home stretch here. Now that you understand the process, we want to help you really understand step by step what are the important things that you need to consider. And we're going to sort of wrap it up with talking about when you actually are applying as a scholar athlete, what sort of strategies involved with that, and some decisions you're going to make, but also some common misunderstandings and pitfalls that you might run into. So we'll just roll through it. Okay, so we'd like to optimize your foundation in a few ways, right? We want to optimize your foundation as a student, okay? Take care of that scholar part, don't forget about it. What does that mean? It means you're in a great school, you're getting good advice from the people in your school. You choose your courses carefully. You keep an eye on those NCAA eligibility. We mentioned that we're not going to deep dive in NCAA eligibility or the whole clearinghouse right now, but know that NCAA has a really good, really user-friendly website, so you can figure out very quickly what are those core courses I need to take. You're going to focus on being the best student you can be while you're being a really great athlete. Don't make the mistake of sitting back and saying, well, I am a great track star. I don't need to worry about school. You're going to open so many more doors for yourself as a track star if you have a transcript that can support you. Okay? Keep an eye on this. Don't let it take a back seat. What does that mean? Just basically, it's finding nourishing passions, it's finding mentors, it's you're prioritizing being as successful as you can be academically. Okay, read a lot of books. You have a lot of time waiting on the sidelines with an ice bag on your knee. Pick up a book. Don't just pick up your phone. That's going to nourish your academic side. And the whole goal here is to get to the point in the athletic recruiting threshold with an academic profile that actually makes you easy to recruit if the coach thinks that you can play for them. Okay? What you don't want is to have a coach get all excited about you, and then all of a sudden you send them their transcript and they're like, yeah, no, we can't do this. Okay, so don't forget that that's there. And the other piece of this is you're preparing yourself for college. Okay? You want to do as well as you can in high school so that when you get to college and it's challenging, you're ready. Okay? You're psyched. You're ready. It's the scholar piece is first for a reason. Okay? Athletically, you're optimizing your foundation by doing things like seeking the highest levels of training and competition. Okay? Don't be complacent about just being on your high school team if you've got a really good opportunity to play on a great club team as well. Okay? Go into a challenging camp. If you're in a sport that has rankings, so squash, golf, tennis, pay attention to the tournaments and the system that allows you to be ranked in the country, because those kind of sports really focus on how you measure up nationally. Okay, they have very clear systems. It's different than a team sport that might operate completely different. They want to see you playing. Like the golf coaches don't really want to see you playing. They want to know how you did in all these big tournaments and how you prepared to do it. You're thinking about those metrics. Jeff mentioned the crew metrics. Okay, every sport has metrics that they're going to pay attention to. Okay, I had a girl who was an incredible runner, and her metrics were very specific around her times for certain events. And the coaches were clear. They're like, as soon as you break 5 minutes for the mile, call me. She was like, 5:02, 5:03. She's like, they're not calling me. They're not reading back. It's like, you heard this. Like, you heard this information. They want to talk to you when you break 5 minutes. And when she did, they were all started to pick up her phone and answer her emails. Okay, so they're going to set you there are going to be some standards you want to pay attention to. You want to develop your talent and your physical abilities to showcase them so that the college coaches can be exciting and can actually be able to assess your talent in competitive markets. Okay? Pretty straightforward. So, we talked a little about what does it take to be a great college scholar athlete in college. What does it take to be a great athletic recruit? Okay, these are the first up. Understand the process. You're investing in that right now. Conducting thoughtful research. It's really important, and there's 3 ways we're going to talk about that. Positive self-advocacy. Jeff already talked about that. You walk into the coach's office, you're the communicator. You're the one stepping into the limelight and saying, I coach, I want to learn about your program. Accepting honest feedback. That's a huge one. Okay, you're going to hear things along the way that you don't really want to hear. Okay, a coach is like, well, I'm looking for, I'm talking to some goalies, and this particular, I can't come up with an example at this moment. They're looking for something and they're thinking that, well, you're close, but you're not quite there. Or I'm just not seeing your style of play is different than the style of my team. That's honest feedback, and it's valuable because it helps you focus on the places that actually want to recruit you. Okay, sometimes you're going to have to let go of things. That willingness to make decisions based on incomplete information is another big piece of this. Not all the coaches are not going to all be on the same timeline for you. And so you're not always going to have clarity about where you stand at some places when others are really accelerating their interest in you. So you're going to have to be okay with that and recognize that that's possible. What you do to shrink that and to sort of minimize those incomplete information gaps is step in and ask those questions, right? You're going to ask the questions that help you know exactly where you stand. One. So when we talk about the recruiting process, targeting your colleges is a big deal. You're like, I don't even know where to begin. Well, begin with your coaches. Okay, talk to them and say, I want to play sports in college. Where do you see me being able to play? Where have people like me from this team been successful before? Older teammates are amazing, actually. That, I think, is a really important sort of treasure trove of information for you. So if you're a sophomore and you've got seniors on your teams who are being recruited, have gone through this, they're playing your sport at a very similar level to you, and they've been to the camps, they've gone through the process, they know which coaches start recruiting more actively when. Tap into that information because of that crazy Venn diagram that we showed you a little earlier. Get the information for your sport. You can be a scavenger hunt, okay? Like, turn it into a fun thing. If your coach says to you, Susie, I think you can play at Dickinson. Who does Dickinson play? Look at their schedule online. It's there. Who do those teams play? Where do they land in the rankings for the regional and national rankings? Who are around them? If you're like getting recruited or getting some like pings of interest from somebody who's ranked 37 in the country in a particular division, who's like number 20 to 50? Those coaches. It helps you cast that wide net. It gives you some new ideas. Push yourself out there. Don't sit around waiting for them to come back. Okay, when we talk about research, it's 3-pronged, okay? You're doing college research about the actual college where you're trying to put that's on the table. You're going to really research the team so you understand exactly what you'd be getting into. And you're going to research what your recruiting prospects, how likely is it that you get recruited? So another mantra, be a savvy consumer. So when you research colleges, you work with your college counseling office, the counseling office here, to understand how to do good college research. Don't skip this step, okay? You really want to know what the whole college experience is all about, okay? The academic offerings and the ethos, do they align with your priorities? Do they offer what you want to study? What's the community culture like? What's the residential like? And actually figure out if it's a place that you think you could thrive. Okay, this is very important. Don't skip this step. If we talk about the teams, remember before I was talking to you some about the variances in different teams and their rules and their expectations. This is another terrible PowerPoint, but I think it's on the handout. You want to really pay attention you want to put your antenna up hard to find out what it's like to be on that team. What's it like to be on the bus after you've lost a game? What are those expectations? What are those restrictions? Where are the coaches reaching into your life? What kind of coach is it? Okay, not every coach is the same, right? You want to try to really understand what's it like to be, if I was on this team, what would it be like? So that's up to you. You need to dive in there and figure that out. So here's some questions that we want you to ask. When we talk about researching what are the chances of what your sort of recruiting prospects are, what are you looking for in your recruit? What are those characteristics? The skills, the positions. If you're a goalie, you want to know how many goalies they keep, right? You want to know where you fit. Are they recruiting goalies this year? If you're a swimmer, are they looking for distance swimmers this year? Do they need a particular stroke? What are they actually recruiting? Ask those questions. How many spots do you have to fill, and how many have you already committed? These are the scary questions that Jeff was mentioning earlier, but they're really important. When will I know where I stand? That's brave, right? But you want that timeline because you're, again, trying to reduce that information gap so that you can make your really good decision. At what stage will the admissions officer review my transcript? That's always that's like a marker that they're actually paying some attention to you, that they're looping the admissions office in. And what stands between me and becoming one of your recruits? That's one of those places where you have to accept some honest feedback, okay? But you want to hear it. If they're like, oh, you know, we only recruit, again, that example I used of the miler who needed to break 5 minutes before, like that stood between her and getting recruited. And when she did it, changed the game for her. So when you get to the application process, we're home stretch here, you need to have a strategic plan, okay? You need to be ready to make decisions based on incomplete information, okay? Things that have those permanent consequences. So Coach A might be saying, you're in a pool of kids that I'm still considering. I'm not sure when, you know, I need a few more months to figure this out. Coach B might be saying, hey, we love you. We want you to commit. You're like our top forward that we're recruiting this year. You have 2 weeks to decide. Okay, those two timelines are so disparate, but you got to decide. Do I go with the offer that's on the table and let go of A, or do I let go of B, this great opportunity, just on the hopes that A is going to come through? Those are decisions. There's not a right or wrong decision there, but there's a big conversation to have there. The broken leg test, there's two versions of that. One is from the student side. Okay, you've done all of this work, you've done all your recruiting, you've trained all summer, you've packed your bags, you move into college, and you fall down the stairs while you're carrying your last trunk into your room, and you blow out your knee and you can never play your sport again. Do you actually like your college? Did you do enough research about your college to figure out that you picked a place that you can thrive whether or not you're on that team? That's important. Okay, give yourself the chance to do that well. The colleges do this too, okay? When they're reading applications, when they're evaluating their applicants, they're thinking to themselves, if this kid blows out their knee on the way into the dorm on the first day, are we glad they're here? You're going to remember that when you're actually applying, okay? Because you want to do a good job on your application that speaks to that college vision of the broken leg test. And the two-track approach to applying is most scholar athletes, most recruitable athletes are like really taken by the primary support training. But if you're one of those people who, if you think way back to the beginning of the program, just really wants to play their sport in college no matter what, and might not get recruited, or maybe the recruiting is like a little tenuous, put some trains out of the station where you are confident you can walk on. Walking on is a great opportunity in a lot of places. Okay, so put some energy into some secondary support where you know you can play. Okay, and now when you get to the application process, here's back to the broken leg test. You're speaking to this. Apply as a student, not as an athlete. The coach, if you're being recruited, the coach is taking care of the athletic side of your candidacy. Okay, they're putting their full support into you. You're applying as a student. You are not, okay? You are not writing your essays, your college essays about sports at all. No athletic essays, okay? You're a person, you're a student. You're not writing about your sports team. Okay, you're choosing teacher recommendations from teachers who have taught you core subjects, not a teacher who taught you, who was your baseball coach or who taught you in like 9th grade English who happened to be your baseball coach, okay? Not that, okay? You're picking teachers. You're paying attention to your standardized testing. You're showcasing your commitment to the whole college experience so that they understand that you're impacting, you're not just coming with this tunnel vision approach to college. You're really thinking, like, you're avoiding them thinking that you are only in it for athletics. Okay, you're not waiting to the very last minute. You're not, well, there are no more pencils or scratching out to worry about. You're proofreading your essays. You're actually showcasing yourself and your commitment to the whole experience in your whole application. You want to take us home, Jeff?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So a lot of these you've already referenced, so just sort of file them away, this notion of your organization, your commitment, your responsibility, your careful listening, your good question asking. So, in the same way we're saying the sort of habits and dispositions of a successful recruit and the characteristics of a successful student athlete, right? These are the things that are connected to working with the coach. And the reason why we focus in on these is there is this thing that we refer to as coach speak. Okay? So again, they're casting a super wide net. They're trying to develop relationships. They want to have students who are going to stick with their program and make it all the way through and play for them for 4 years. So we refer to it as they tend to operate with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake at all times. And things can suddenly stop or suddenly get going. So they'll use language that makes it really complicated, I think, at times for student athletes to figure out where they fit. And these are just some of the ones, we don't have to do all of them, but these are some of the ones that we run into all the time. So you go and you're a Division III swimmer, and you go and you visit a NESCAC school, you see the pool, you meet the coach, everything's great, the coach says, hey, I really enjoyed meeting you. So, you know what, we'd love to have you on the team, right? And then you come home and you go, I'm being recruited, right? That means nothing about being recruited. We'd love to have you on the team, okay? You have to then turn around and say, oh, coach, that's awesome that you think that I could be a contributing member of your team. Does that mean you're going to support me in the process? If I apply early, you're going to put me on your list, right? That's where those other questions come in. Holly was referencing this notion of what stands between me and being one of your recruits. If a coach says, I really like you, I think you can play here, but I need your SATs to go up by 280 points. Okay? Well, that stands between you and becoming one of their recruits. Why don't you sort of figure out where they fit? And I say the only other ones I would sort of want to jump onto is this notion of the admission office says you're fine. I used to do that in university admissions. Okay, the crew coaches would bring me 50 transcripts. And I would sit there and I would go, okay, fine, no. I need to think about this one. Fine, no, definitely not. Right, and go through the entire stack. Right, and so when I said somebody is fine, right, and they went back and said that, hey, I talked to my liaison, they say you're fine. The kid would naturally think, that's it, I'm in. Right? Fine means, from an admission officer standpoint, I am giving you the okay to go and continue recruiting this prospective student athlete. I want to see the rest of the application and figure out where he fits within your list. Right? That kind of stuff is important. And then the only one I'm going to grab onto is this notion that, look, I really like you. I committed all my forwards. If you get in on your own, I'd love to have you on the team. So you know what? I'm going to send an email or I'm going to talk to my liaison and just let them know that you could play for me, and I'll offer you soft support. Okay? Soft support doesn't exist. We hear this every single year. Okay, right? When you get to that stage, if a coach is saying, I'm not going to put you on my list, you need to decide whether you're going to apply anyway or whether you're going to move on. Athletic recruiting is binary. You're on the bus or you're off the bus. Right? But you'll hear that stuff all the time. So I said we do 75 minutes. I think we made it. Okay. This notion of participating in college athletics and navigating the athletic recruiting stream is 100% possible. If you want to get a good education and continue playing the sports you love, you can do it. Take the responsibility, you take the initiative, you're doing the communication, you're doing your research. There is no doubt in our minds, we've been doing this for a decade plus, right, that you can do it if you want to. But you've got to drive it. It's your responsibility. Go back to that early slide with the truisms, right? And it starts, again, from the very first communication that you have with the coach to the time you walk across the stage with your diploma. Right? That's your responsibility, right? But again, that notion of seeking good resources, of asking good questions, right, is an educational mantra. Like, having the answers is as important as knowing what the right questions are to ask as you go through any process. Right? So that's sort of when we get to that philosophical end of what we're trying to describe to you as you go through that to be a successful student athlete. That's a perspective that we think is incredibly important, and we probably spend more time with our own prospective student athletes, getting them to ask the questions, getting them to talk to the coaches, getting them to do the research, right? Digging into the details under which what they want to get out of being a student athlete in college, right? And making the decisions about what things you're willing to give up to gain other aspects of it, and what you want to really have as the ethos of your higher education experience. So seeking good resources, you're super patient, right? Listening to me talk as fast as I possibly can to get all the information out, that you need to be able to navigate this. If you're at all interested in digging into something that you can read a little bit more slowly, we did bring copies of the book. And in fact, Holly is the second version, and Holly did a fantastic section of the second edition, talking about what it's like to be a parent and to go through the process after she navigated watching two very different kids figure out how they want to organize their college athletic career. Okay, so we thank you for inviting us. We'll stick around to answer questions for a while. I know it's a midweek night, so we'll probably want to get home and have dinner and relax. I don't know if the Celtics are on tonight, but
Lions are.
Oh, Lions are.
So big round of applause, you guys. We did record it. We'll post it for temporarily on the website. Probably do that later, probably early next week, just before the break, if you wanted to catch up. But the book is an incredible resource as well. Just a thank you to Holly and Jeff for being here tonight. That was incredible and so generous. They said they'd be happy to answer any questions. Did you guys walk out? I don't want to hold anyone any longer. I know it's a late night, so thank you guys so much.